especially those of you who are so prompt. As I've said, I have put up a poll on the side. It would be great if you could slide down. There's more than one question, just complete them. It's really nice for us to know who we've got in the group and where people are coming in from. And as lots of you have spotted, feel wonderful to know we have such a wide international audience. So normally my webinars when I train people are much smaller, but of course, you know, when you're offering things to people and they don't know you, it's very hard to get people to commit and in small groups. So I'm trying to do things a little bit differently here so that you can all benefit from the framework. Please do take notes, grab an iPad, grab a notebook, because I don't share the slides and there's no recording because I need to get permission from everybody because your names are all visible. So please do take lots of notes and hopefully you'll find it really, really helpful. So I'm going to end the poll just because we've got kind of 400 people in, so it's just nice to see that actually got a lot of UK people, unsurprisingly, but a nice global audience, lots of people from the Americas as well. And as you can see, which I always think is quite nice to see, sorry, I've not shared the results, so now you can see that actually most people here do want to be more effective as a speaker, and for a significant proportion of you, a third of people who have responded to the polls feel that your public speaking skills are holding you back in your career and personal life. And this is something I hear all the time, so totally empathize with how frustrating it is to feel that you're not getting the opportunities in your personal or professional life that you deserve because you aren't able to articulate or communicate in the right way. So what I would ask, if you just have a look at the slide, just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to change the chat so that you can just message me directly so that we don't get too much distraction, and I'll try and spend a little bit of time doing questions at the end. If you could, I've put you all on mute anyway, just so there's no background noise. If you could minimize the view of others, so if you're new to Zoom, although I imagine most people are now dab hands at it, if you just minimize it so that I'm the only person you can see the slides and see me. And if you close your group chat, it just makes it easier so that you can see the full slide. So thank you so much to those of you who are here. I'll just give you a little bit of information about me, just so that you know who I am and why I coach public speaking. So I started public speaking training in 2013, so it's been quite a while now, and in that time I've trained over 100 politicians, I've stood for Parliament twice myself, and I've trained over 25 MPs now, 9 current ministers. I coach professionals, politicians, and people who just want to feel that a little bit more confident with their public speaking. So whether it's a university interview, first job interview, wedding speech, leadership speeches, conferences, I do all sorts. I won the South East England Association of Speakers Club speaking competition and came fourth in the UK. And I've done over 2,000 hours of training. And I think now for this 7-step framework that I'm about to teach you all, I've now taught this year alone over 8,000 people or 8,500 people the framework. So I do lots of TV and I moderate lots of panels. So hopefully you'll feel you're in good hands, and thank you very much for giving me the next 30 minutes of your time. And what I want to tell you is that everybody who you think is a speaker has probably had training. And it's like being in school when the person who's always getting the A grades tells you, I didn't do any revision. Chances are they were lying then, and chances are if a speaker tells you they haven't had any training now, they're probably not being fully truthful. Because if they haven't had training, they've at least had a huge amount of practice. So whilst it's really useful to find role models and people to aspire to be like, I do want you to think about the kind of Instagram reality element of it, that actually you are comparing yourself to people whose job it is to be good at public speaking. So please don't hold yourself to that standard, but know that with the right coaching, with the right amount of work, and with the effort from you, you can get there yourself. So today, whilst there's a lot I would like to cover with you, we only have 30 minutes. And like I said, normally my webinars where I teach clients are maximum kind of 15, 16 people. And as you can see, we're nearly at 600 now. So it's not interactive the way I like to do it, but I will teach you a 7-step framework today. that should give you the foundation to help you be a really effective and confident speaker. And before I do Q&A, I'll just spend a couple of minutes telling you about future opportunities to cover the steps and get help. But for now, the 7-step framework, and don't worry, you don't need to write these down. We're going to go over each of them one by one, and I will give you a summary at the end. But the 7-step framework is the 5 W's: self-belief, authenticity, identity and connections, passion and energy, and preparation. And for anybody who has just joined, thank you very much. There isn't a recording of this, so please do take notes. If you do feel like you've missed something and you want to hear it again, I'm running the same webinar on the 1st, so you are very welcome to join again, but do take notes if you can. So the first element I want to cover is the 5 W's. And this is because I often get clients coming to me and they'll say to me, can you help me structure my pitch, my presentation, my speech, something that they really care about, something that could be make or break in their career. And I'll ask them about their 5 W's and they won't know what they are, they won't know how to prepare for them. So it's actually much easier than it sounds. Your 5 W's are your who, what, why, where, and when. And the reason these are important is because people will often say to me, oh, I need to speak in a way that meets my objectives. And it's like, well, if you don't know what your objectives are, and if you don't know what your audience's objectives are, you're not going to be successful. It's like trying to shoot a target with your eyes closed. You might fire your gun or your arrow somewhere, but it's not going to be effective because you won't know what you're trying to hit or in which direction to point. So what you want to do when you start writing your speech or presentation is think about your 5 W's. So who's in your audience and who is your speech targeted at? Now, these are 2 very different things. It could be that you have 500 people in your audience, in which case that's who is in your audience. But it could be that you're doing a sales pitch, you're trying to sell your product, and there's only 5 people in the audience who actually have the ability to sign off on purchasing your new software. And so whilst you want to be interesting to the 500, what you really want to think about is actually what is going to make the 5 people, the 5 directors with budget capacity, what's going to make them want to buy your software. And if the directors only care about the cost, then spending your entire presentation telling them about how effective your software is not going to do the job for them. So you need to think who's in your audience and who is your speech targeted at. For the people messaging, no, sorry, this isn't recorded, please do take notes. The next W you want to think about is why. So why have you been asked and why is your audience there? And it could be you have specific skills or experience. It could be that no one else wanted to do it. It could be that they thought this is a terrible thing to have to do in a job and will palm it off on the least experienced person. But if you understand why you've been chosen, if it is to do with your experience or skill set, then you can make sure you really utilize that. You want to think, what are your audience interested in? What's the objective of your talk? So what would be a successful outcome? Is it a round of applause? Is it a pat on the back from your boss? Is it a sale of a product? Is it getting a job? If you understand what your objective is and what the objective of your audience is, that can be really beneficial. You might be thinking that your objective is to sell your software. Your audience might be thinking, we actually just want to understand if our software is as good as the one they're peddling. So if you understand the objectives, you'll understand how to be more capable of aligning your objective with your audience's objective. And then you want to think about, what's your call to action? What do you want people to do as a result of your speech or presentation? Do you want them to think, to act, to buy, to feel? And once you're clear on that, you can make sure that your speech or your presentation is tailored in that direction. You also want to think about the where and the when. And this is really important to help you understand the mindset of your audience. So where it is and when it is will affect whether you want to keep it short and sweet, whether you need to be entertaining and lively, whether you need to have statistics and figures, or whether it needs to be personal, whether it's an entertaining dinner speech, whether you're introducing someone else. All these things will help you to understand the mindset of your audience and therefore how you can be effective. So before you speak, before you even start writing, you want to take a piece of paper and write down your answers to each of the 5 W's. And if you don't know what they are, find out. So for example, today I wanted to know a little bit about my audience, where you're from, what it is that's brought you to this webinar. And so I put a poll at the beginning. Do not be afraid to ask your audience. Do not be afraid to send an email to the organizer of a conference and say, who's in the audience? What would a really good presentation look like to you? Because that simple question can help you make sure that what you deliver is actually really effective. The next W that I want to talk to you about is self-belief. And at this moment in time, I just want to take a second to ask you all about imposter syndrome. So have you suffered from imposter syndrome? And that is, for those of you who aren't sure, that feeling of not being good enough, of feeling like a fraud, of feeling that people might find out that you don't deserve to be where you are in life. I'll just give you 30 seconds to fill that in. Whoever's asking how you minimize participants on a mobile phone, normally if you just swipe to the side, you should be able to get rid of them. Depends on your phone though, sorry. And well, I will address questions after. I'll just let you finish. I think I've got about 78% of you voted, so I'll give you 15 more seconds if you haven't voted. It's anonymous, by the way. I can't see, no one else can see, we just see a percentage, so I won't know how you voted, don't worry. But the reason I ask this is because it's really important to know, and I hope you'll find this interesting. I've got kind of 80% of you voted now, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. As you'll see, 67% of you have felt imposter syndrome in the last year alone. And if I'd said ever, I think it would have been almost all of you. But as you can see, 2/3 of people in this webinar have suffered imposter syndrome in the last year alone. And as I mentioned, imposter syndrome is the feeling of not being good enough. So when I talk about self-belief, it's how you think about yourself and often, really importantly, how you treat yourself. So when we suffer imposter syndrome, it's that feeling of not deserving to be there. And in my group webinars, I do a huge amount of work on how to tackle imposter syndrome, how to tackle self-confidence, and how to build that up. But for today, what I want to teach you is one simple trick: is practice turning your self-positivity, your self-criticism into positivity. So for example, we're very good, I call it the devil voice and the angel voice. We're very good at letting the devil voice say, you're not good enough, you're not qualified, you shouldn't be here. But what you want to do is try and get that angel voice to speak a bit louder. So instead of thinking to yourself, why am I here? I'm not qualified, when you're about to go on stage, think to yourself, I am qualified, that's why I'm here. Or my boss thinks I'm qualified or knows I'm qualified, that's why I'm here. And it is difficult, but the more you can practice forcing yourself to stop when a negative thought enters your mind and turning it into something positive, the quicker you'll build back up your self-esteem and your self-confidence. You also want to ask others to feed you positivity and treat yourself the way you treat your friends. I imagine if a friend came to you and said, I've got this presentation, I'm really nervous about it, I don't think I'm good enough to do it. I imagine most of us wouldn't turn to that friend and say, yeah, you probably should be nervous, you don't deserve to be there, you're a fake, or you're not going to be very good. Actually, what we'd say is all the reasons why they do deserve to be there and are good enough. And yet when we speak to ourselves, we're very, very good at criticizing ourselves. So whenever you find yourself being nervous or having a lapse in self-confidence, treat yourself the way you treat your friends and force yourself to put that positive, constructive criticism or building up of your self-esteem so that you can be more confident. Step number 3 is authenticity. So we often give ourselves the added pressure, the added challenge of trying to fulfill the characteristics or behaviors of successful people. So we see a role model, we see a great speaker, a politician, a TEDx speaker, someone in our industry who's really, really good at what they do. And we put the pressure on ourselves that we need to be more like them. Now, whilst it's great to have role models, it's a bad idea to put too much pressure on yourself because it means that you come across fake. So firstly, you want to say what you mean and mean what you say. And you want to think about what you've said in the past. So this could be between your CV, your application, and your interview. This could be if you're on social media, if you are the kind of speaker that would have the media or social media quoting what you've said. Your message must be consistent and clear. And I know we've all been in situations where we've had to speak and we know we'll be delivering bad news or that the audience won't like our message. But you have to think about the fact, and this is especially true for the politicians I train, that even if your audience doesn't like your answer, they're at least likely to respect you more if you are authentic. And if you're authentic, it means you don't have to remember lies and you don't have to remember a perspective or a thought that you don't agree with. So, like I said, not everyone will like what you say, but they'll mostly respect you if you're authentic. So, be true to yourself and really think about how that comes across in every element of your life. The next step in the framework, step number 4, is identity and connections. So we have, and hundreds of studies have shown that we have a natural subconscious bias to like people who remind us of ourselves. Now, it's very common for people to assume that that means purely that we are either drawn to, women are drawn to women, men are drawn to men, or people of different ethnic minorities are drawn to each other. And whilst that is one element of it, it's actually a lot more nuanced than that. And actually, what we have is that we identify with people who make us think of ourselves. So it could be that we identify with people who do the same job as us, who went to the same school or university, who grew up in the same town, who like the same things. And so when you're speaking, presenting, or pitching, you want to tap into this subconscious positive bias. You want to think about what you can say or do to tap into that subconscious bias so that your audience thinks, oh, I feel a connection with this speaker. So find ways to connect and demonstrate common ground. Now you have to remember to be authentic. I don't have kids, for example, so it would be very odd for me to start talking about what life is like as a parent when I'm not one. But if I know that my audience is mainly made up of people who suffer from imposter syndrome, then sometimes what I like to do is in a longer session is give a little story about how I've dealt with my imposter syndrome. And immediately what that does is make people in the audience think, actually, I can understand that. So you want to find ways to demonstrate that common ground. Sharing personal stories is a great way to do that. It builds trust and rapport. So a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of opening up and revealing personal information about yourself can really benefit your connection with your audience. And you also want to show genuine interest and curiosity in those you're speaking to. Now, I could deliver this presentation and not do any polls, but actually the fact I do the polls, the fact that I ask you about yourself, scientifically, the studies show, will make you feel more connected to this training. It will make you feel as though you are actually being given training that meets your needs, which hopefully you are, because when I see how many people suffer from imposter syndrome, for example, it helps me to realize that this is actually something that people could benefit from. So just remember, don't overdo it. You don't want to be faking similarities. But again, if you've done a little bit of research, that can really help. So I run 4-week group courses for small webinars. And in advance of those, I will ask each of my participants to let me know kind of what their main objective is, what they do, and a little bit about themselves. And what that means is by the time we start training, we already have a connection. And it means it's much easier for us to work and build up their speaking than if they were total strangers to me. So step number 5 of the framework, remember the 7-step framework, is communication. So when I talk to my clients about communication, and this is true across industries, across seniority levels and everything, when we talk about communication, I ask clients, and like I said, regardless of whether they're students going for university interviews or CEOs preparing for presentations, they kind of think of communication as the same thing. And they'll say, oh, it's what you say and how you say it. And yes, that's of course absolutely true, but most people think it's about content, literally just the words and how you shape those words. And while of course words are important, lots of you will have seen the statistic, communication is actually 7% what you say, 38% your tone of voice, and 55% body language. So there is no point in delivering a speech with great content if your body language is a turnoff and you sound bored. Now, what this means is that most people focus on packing in as much in terms of content as they can without giving their audience time to absorb it, time to process it, time to think about it. And most people, and I won't ask you in a poll, but think about it, most people spend the majority of their time when they're preparing for a speech or presentation or interview just thinking about the words. And most people don't actually speak it out loud until it's the real thing. Now, think about how different it would be if I did my training like this and my tone of voice was dull, my body language showed that I was bored, I didn't make eye contact, and I just did it the way I thought. Now, immediately, hopefully, I'm of course exaggerating, but hopefully you'll see that body language and the way you use your voice is hugely important. So what you need to do is pay special attention to how you're using your words. Always make sure you speak your speeches or your presentations out loud, and make sure you're practicing at least once in front of a mirror with your body language to make sure that you're really making the most of the words. So you want to use tools to help connect with your audience. You want to think about using personal stories, facts, quotes, examples, case studies, statistics. And what you want to do is think about how you're making your audience feel. So people might forget what they said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And it really is better to say half as much and have twice as much effect than it is to pack in tons of content that your audience can't really take in. I'm sure you've all been to speeches and presentations where people have just spoken so quickly that you haven't had time to really make the most of the information or content. And you just don't want to be that kind of person who loses the value because your audience can't take in what you're saying. Okay, step number 6 of my 7-step framework is passion and energy. Now, this isn't just about your tone of voice or smiling. You need to think about how the words you're using match with your body language. So the first thing you want to do is build on your knowledge to strengthen your ability to answer questions. This is especially relevant for the people who are doing interviews and say they really struggle with that. And the problem with your interviews is people often say things like, I'm really passionate about this job or about this work or about this company. Except they can't back that up. So if you're going to say that you're passionate about something, make sure you build on your knowledge so you can actually answer questions. Make sure you can back up your passion with logic, and then think about your positive energy in your body language, which can lead to mirroring. So for example, as a practice, I want you to think about something you're passionate about. It could be politics, sports, gardening, running, anything you want, doesn't matter. And then you should talk for a minute or two about it and record yourself. And what you'll see is how positive your body language is. You lean in, your shoulders are forward, you're making eye contact, you're making gestures and body language, you're smiling probably. And then film yourself talking about a work presentation. And chances are that positive body language won't quite be the same. So you want to try and incorporate your tone, your energy, and your excitement from something you really care about into all your speeches and presentations so that you really can come across as energetic and effective. So you want to use your own body language, mimic yourself to show how effective and confident you can be. And then step number 7 of the framework, and I will give you a summary of this and then I'll take some questions. So if you've got any questions, feel free to send them to me if you haven't already. The step number 7 is preparation. I used to be a semi-professional dancer, and for those of you who are in the UK, I danced at the opening of the Millennium Dome, I danced in Trafalgar Square, and I would never, ever, ever have done a dance performance and only started rehearsing the day before or the week before. And if you're an athlete, you know, of course, it's the same. You wouldn't ever go to a competition or a match and not have prepared for a few weeks in advance. And so whilst we wouldn't leave training or rehearsals to the last minute and expect to do well, it's incredible how many people leave their preparation to the last minute. Now, of course, sometimes you just don't have the capacity or the ability to prepare, especially if it's something your boss has come to you and said, you need to do this in 10 minutes time. But where relevant, where you can, the earlier you start to prepare, the better. So anticipate tough questions and prepare for them. This is really relevant for presentations, for interviews, for panels. If you don't want to do it yourself, then get a colleague, a partner, a friend, a boss to tell you what difficult questions they think you might get. And you can also look it up. So Google, strategy consulting interview questions and start to prepare like that. It sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people don't do it. Make sure you've worked through your 5 W's. Now, people often don't do this because they think it's going to take a really long time. But the reality is you can do it in just 2 minutes. Just to grab a pen and paper and bullet point it out. Research the people interviewing you, research people in your audience. Again, like I said, this could just be a case of a quick LinkedIn search or asking the organizers. And then get your point out in the first 30 seconds. People tend to ramble a lot. And that's often because they're trying to think of the answer while speaking. So that when you get asked a question, pause first, think to yourself, and then speak. And that should help you be much more concise and to the point. But if you can't get your key point out in the first 30 seconds, chances are you aren't really clear on what your point actually is. So force yourself to prepare. When I train politicians, what I get to do is I put a timer on for 30 seconds, I ask them a question, and I let the alarm go off. And if they can't answer a question in 30 seconds, I make them do it again and again and again. Of course, you might have longer than 30 seconds to answer a question, which is great, but you probably will be losing your audience's attention if it sounds like you're rambling. You want to, of course, reread your CV, supporting statement, and any other information you've shared. And make sure you speak in front of family and friends. You should be practicing and getting feedback, especially if it's a big presentation or speech that could really affect your personal or professional life. Film yourself speaking. That's really, really valuable because you can then watch and see, do you have any annoying habits? When people are nervous, I tend to see a lot of hair playing or fiddling with the wedding ring. So you can watch yourself and make sure you're training those things out. And finally, I should say, do whatever it takes to make you feel powerful and confident. So whenever I'm speaking, I like to put a little bit of makeup on because I don't normally wear much makeup, and make sure my hair's done. And this came about because I had to do TV at short notice once, live TV. And I had to go to Sainsbury's, the local supermarket, buy shampoo and wash my hair in the sink at work. I had to borrow a blazer from an intern, and I didn't have any makeup. And whilst it went okay, I know that I would have felt a lot more confident if I'd looked and felt powerful. So do whatever it takes to make you feel powerful. So that's the 7-step framework. And as I mentioned, there's a lot more I would normally share with you, but this is just a really kind of a solid foundation that should really help you to build up your public speaking. So please stick around, I will take questions, but just as a quick overview, especially if you missed the beginning, step number 1 is the 5 W's. So can you bullet point your who, what, why, where, and when? Step number 2 is self-belief. So tackle your imposter syndrome, tackle your lack of confidence by turning your self-criticism into positivity. Step number 3 is authenticity. So be true to yourself because that really builds trust with your audience. Step number 4 is identity and connection. So we have a natural subconscious bias to like people like ourselves, so tap into that. Step number 5 is communicate effectively. So your content is of course important, but don't forget your voice, your body language. Step number 6 is passion and energy. So your passion can be so effective and so inspiring. So don't forget to bring that with you. And step number 7 is preparation. So work through the 7-step framework, anticipate and prepare for difficult questions, and make sure you have your power outfit on. So like I said, there's a lot more that I teach, but this is just a 7-step framework. So before I take questions, I'll just tell you very quickly. I mentioned that I run a webinar series, and I've had quite a few questions about training. So I'll just tell you quickly now that I run 4-week group courses, so it's an hour a week for 4 weeks. The next courses start either next Saturday, 11 a.m. This is British time, so the time zone that now at 6 o'clock, or Tuesday, 8th of September, 6 p.m. So it's a 60-minute class, 1-hour class for 4 weeks, and it includes time for Q&A. There's interactive classes, so we do lots of exercises together because obviously there's only 16 people, and I give a little bit of home exercises just for you to develop skills. So that's normally £85 for a 4-week course, but I will be sending you an email. You have a special offer for it to be £75. I'll send you an email later this week. I also run Podium Peers, it's a Facebook membership group, so I understand some people don't want to commit to an hour a week for 4 weeks, or they want ongoing training, or that they just can't afford the cost. It's just £9.99 a month. You can cancel at any time, and it's just a really nice community with lots of Facebook Lives, lots of Q&As, lots of chance to get to work with people and practice your speeches and presentations. So if you would like to join the Podium Peers community, I will again let you know how to do that. Otherwise, just send me an email at which I'll give you my email address in a minute. And then, as I've said, if you do want any help, I do lots of one-to-one public speaking coaching, especially for people going for jobs or people who are on the leadership track and want a little bit of tailored support. I do group coaching and corporate coaching. And the great thing is, if you recommend me to your HR department, I give you 1 free hour of one-to-one training. And then, of course, as I mentioned, I do webinars. So if you have a group of friends and family or a community group that you want to do private training with, then of course we can set that up. So I'll do some questions now, but in case you are interested in getting in touch with me, I do run 15-minute free consultations if you want some advice or some help. So you could just send me an email. It's resham@podiumperfect.co.uk. And I share free resources on the website, Instagram, LinkedIn and Facebook. So if you just follow me, it's Podium Perfect. So now in terms of questions, okay, sorry, there's just a lot suddenly showing. If you are trying to sell things on here, please don't, and that's only coming to me anyway. Someone said being a single parent and juggling a career makes imposter syndrome really hard to overcome. It gets me down, which impacts some of my briefings. Absolutely, I would say start building your positivity up. Write down a few positive things that you can see first thing in the morning. And if you know that you are struggling with your confidence, then find a supportive friend or family member who you can go to when you're stressed and get them to just build you up a little bit. I become blank while facing interview. How can I overcome my fear? So that's a very common one. Adrenaline is a natural hormone that makes us feel, it's the fight, flight, or freeze hormone. That's the response we get. So the key thing I would say is try and find positive ways to deal with that. So some people like to drink. That dehydrates your voice, so I wouldn't recommend it. But trying to get rid of the adrenaline, if you can go for a run, if you can go for a long walk, if you can go to a boxing class or a spinning class the morning before, that should help. And then do things like meditation or deep breathing before you start is a really effective way to calm down your breath and to stop you from feeling panicky. Similar, someone said, how do I calm a mild stutter? Presuming you don't have any medical health issues. And of course, I'm not a doctor, so I can't help you with that if it's a medical issue. But again, if you do some meditation or deep breathing, generally the stuttering comes about if you've got an excess of adrenaline, which you just need to remove from your system. If you lose the audience, how do you win them back? That is a very good question. And the most important thing is understanding that you've lost them in the first place. So having the emotional intelligence to realize that they're not really with you anymore. If it's possible, then take a pause. If you pause, that's normally a really good way to kind of get your audience to kind of come back to you. And think about, could you find a different way to entertain them? Is there a way you could get them to switch it up into an exercise? Could you do something interactive? Because actually, especially online, but even in person, if you're sitting for a long time, it can be quite exhausting. Someone's saying, how do you sign up for the training with the discount? You're very welcome to send me an email. That's on screen, or I'll be sending you an email tomorrow. But don't worry, I don't spam anybody. I'll send you one email, and if you're not interested after that, that's totally fine. But if you send me an email, then that's exactly how to do it. As a young woman, I often overthink that my audience may have preconceived notions about my ability and feel that I may place too much focus on justifying my experience. Any tips? Yes, absolutely. I have a friend who will text his female friends saying BMP, which he says means be more penis. And he says, and apologies for the very graphic terminology there, but he says that men don't stand up on stage and justify their existence or justify their experience for being there. They own it. So I would say that actually, unfortunately, what you're doing by compensating and justifying your experience is you're actually giving your audience a reason to think, oh, why is she having to justify her experience? Maybe she doesn't deserve to be here. So force yourself to stop. Take some deep breaths, and you have to fake it till you make it. You walk on that stage and you own it. How do you stop someone taking over the meeting? That's a very, very difficult question, especially if you've got kind of someone who does it a lot. Take them aside if it's something that someone that does it regularly, and say, I don't know if you know interruption, it's very frustrating, could you please not? If it's not possible to do that, then in the meeting, very politely turn and say, I'd really appreciate if you could give me the courtesy to finish my point. Say it like that, very politely, very nicely, but say that. Should you hide your accent? No, I absolutely don't think you should. Are you, sorry, I'm starting a new, someone very excitingly is starting a new stage of their business, teaching Zoom classes. Do I have any advice for polling the audience so you can stay true to your speaking style? Should I poll in each class? I would say don't poll for the sake of it. Poll for a reason. No one likes to be asked questions pointlessly. So if you're asking questions because it will help you make the class better, you know, like what is it you're looking to learn? If someone doesn't want to learn knife skills and you plan to spend 10 minutes on it, then you could understand actually maybe you reduce that. But I would ask questions if it's going to help you to be better at doing what you're doing. Someone else has said, you said fake it till you make it, but I think it's important to be authentic and true. And you are very right that this is the exception that proves the rule. The only time where you should be inauthentic is when it comes to your own confidence. And even if you feel terribly nervous on the inside, you should fake it and come across cool, calm, and confident on the outside. So yes, thank you very much for holding me to that. Someone said they've missed the start of the presentation. If you go back onto Eventbrite, I'm running the exact same webinar on the 1st of September, just 30 minutes later than the start time for this one. So please do feel free to sign up. And if you've got anyone you want to share it with, please do too. You're all very welcome. Thank you so much. Yes, fake it till you believe it, Despina has says, and I totally agree with you. Okay, do I recommend Toastmasters or other suggestions that can help with speaking and conversations? Honestly, I'd say that really depends on what you're looking for. I haven't been a part of Toastmasters. My understanding with all speaking clubs is that it depends on the individual speaking club. Some of them are incredibly structured and effective. Some of them are very kind of relaxed and casual. It depends what you're looking for. If you are looking for a space to practice, so I asked my 4-week course participants for feedback, and the overwhelming feedback I had over the last 4 months was that they wanted a place where they could essentially do what a lot of these speaking clubs do. So they wanted to be able to learn some tips and tools. They wanted to be able to practice their presentations and speeches and get feedback. They wanted to be able to ask questions. So that is exactly why I set up Podium Perfect, because it means that you can, Podium Peers, the Facebook group. So as long as you have a Facebook account, you can watch. And obviously the great thing about that compared to more traditional speaking clubs is that everything is saved online. So even if you don't log in for 2 weeks, if you're busy at work or family, then you can just watch it 2 weeks later and see all the things. So so that's exactly why I set that up, just because so many people asked. Where can I find all the statistics or resources to support my speech? That kind of really depends on what you're looking for and your industry. So if you're not sure, then just Google or ask your colleagues. I always think it's best to piggyback off the knowledge of others and find out what they would do. Someone has said, I lead a team of excellent young marketing professionals. Unfortunately, our workplace is rather toxic. That's a real shame. We deal with a lot of politics. Oh, sorry, I don't think this is a question. I'm looking for, okay, if you're looking for specific classes, sorry, I thought that was a question, but it's just directed at me. If you're looking for specific help, please send me an email. Like I said, I offer free consultation, so very happy to talk to you about the issues and whether I can help or not. And if I don't think I can, then I will tell you that very honestly. So there's no cost to you finding out and having a chat with me. I find it difficult to properly answer questions as soon as I'm asked. How do I overcome this? chances are you struggle with questions for two reasons. Firstly, because you haven't done enough actual mock questioning. So you want to get someone to keep firing questions at you so you practice. And secondly, because you're trying to answer straight away. So instead of pausing, thinking, structuring your thoughts, we as humans are very quick to go, this is my answer. So you want to pause, even for a couple of seconds, structure your thoughts, and then answer. And if you're self conscious about pausing, then the best way to do that is to say to yourself, either say to your interviewer, oh, sorry, can I just have a second to think? Or you could say to them, could you just clarify that question? So that's that buys you a little bit of time to think. And then finally, because I'm sorry, there's so many questions, but I am going to have to go. But the good thing is, if you join Podium Peers on Facebook, like I said, it's only $9.99 a month, and you can cancel anytime you want. You can ask me all the questions you'd like. What if you are struggling to engage people online? Make sure that you are doing everything you can to keep your speaking as short and sweet as possible. So you don't want to do a 2-hour meeting on Zoom if it can be done in 25 minutes. So what I say to people is put your ego aside and think, what's the shortest amount of time I need to get this information across effectively rather than the longest? And yes, I help with visual and PowerPoint presentations. Yes, I help with interviews. Yes, I help with wedding speeches. And yes, I help with how to speak. So I'm very sorry. I'm going to have to go now. Thank you so much for giving me your time and spending this evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are with me. As I said, if you missed the beginning and you wanted to join, please do book on Eventbrite. If you wanted a free consultation or you wanted to know about how to sign up to any of my services, please send me an email. And otherwise, have a lovely evening and a lovely weekend. Bye.